Well, I don't know about you, but I got chills right up my arms right now. My name is MichaelPaul Mendoza. I am the proud teacher of these wonderful students. There are other students with us here today that have been in this class and have taken this class that I would like to acknowledge. Can they please stand? This is Dustin from 2016. Cesar, where are you at, Cesar? I know Cesar is hiding. He's over here by the door. So I wanted to thank my students who've also been part of this class. So let's give them a round of applause as well. I'd like to thank them for all their hard work and interest in this history. I'd also like to thank, I know there's many more distinguished guests here, along with Superintendent Heyer. I've noticed city council members, school board members, other civic leaders. I know many of you here, I can't go over by name, but I want to thank all of you for taking your time and being here and showing your support. Thank you. It is now time to begin the students. You may go ahead and find some place to stand. The moment we've been waiting for, right? It's now time to begin the question and answer portion of our program. As educators, we always look for unique ways to introduce and teach history to our students. What we are doing here tonight is the most interesting and accurate and impactful way to learn about history, asking questions to people who experienced it. Before we begin, it is my pleasure to introduce our panel. First is Mr. George Nabori. Mr. Nabori, can you please come on up and take a seat at the panel? Yep. Mr. Nabori currently lives in the Bay Area and was incarcerated with his family at a very young age. His family first had to report to the Fresno Assembly Center for a period of time, then was transferred to Jerome Relocation Center in Arkansas for the remainder of the war. Here we see a picture of young George Nabori, as well as a picture of his father walking through the barracks in Jerome. My students and I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Nabori, as you see in this picture, back in May when our class was invited to watch a production of the musical Allegiance, which presents the Japanese-American experience in the camps during World War II. We met while standing in line. He noticed the students wearing these t-shirts and was intrigued, and it sparked a conversation that has now turned into a unique friendship. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Nabori. Next, we have Madeline Nabori Tom. Madeline has the unique experience and is the only panelist that was born in the camps. Her family was required to report to the Tanforan Assembly Center, which is a location of a horse track in San Bruno, California, just south of San Francisco. Her family was then transferred to the Topaz Relocation Center in Utah. It was at the Topaz prison camp that Madeline was born. On the screen is a picture of Madeline as a baby with her father, as well as a photograph of her parents years after the war. Interestingly, Madeline and George happen to be cousins. Please give a warm welcome to Madeline. Alice Inchinaga Naramura and her family have been residents of Tulare since before World War II. Her parents, James and Kyono Ichinaga, owned a family restaurant in Tulare, Jim's Chop Suey, in which they had to close during their incarceration. Alice is one of 11 children and was also very young when she and her family had to report to the Fresno Assembly Center. They too were transferred to the Jerome Relocation Center in Arkansas. Years after their incarceration as adults, Alice and her siblings each wrote about their experience in the camps and compiled them into a family testament, a book, called All We Could Carry. The book was dedicated to their parents, James and Kiono, who, quote, carried all of us. Please welcome Alice. Our next presenter is Nancy Hanada Bellin. Nancy was just a child when she remembers having to report to the Tulare Assembly Center for just one day before being transferred to the Poston Relocation Center near the Colorado River in Arizona. In the picture, you see Nancy sitting with her elementary classmates in Poston. You also see Nancy, a few years older, standing next to her sister in the camp. Nancy is a native to Tulare County, where she has dedicated her life as an educator. Just a few weeks ago, Nancy officially retired after a fulfilling 42-year career with the Tulare County Office of Education, where she has led important student programs such as the Tulare County Spelling Bee and the program that both of my own children have participated in called Poetry and Prose. If you look at today's Visalia Times Delta, you will find an article featuring Mrs. Bellin's distinguished career. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Nancy Bellin. Our final panelist is Koji Lau Ozawa. Koji's grandmother was residing in, I believe, Koji, where, the Bay Area? Where?
Pasadena.
In Pasadena, Southern California. When she and her children were ordered to report to the Tulare Assembly Center in 1942. While imprisoned in the Tulare Assembly Center for months, awaiting their transfer to Gila River, Arizona, Koji's grandmother drew illustrations to document the scenes and living conditions. Personal cameras were forbidden and considered contraband inside the camps. For that reason, no candid photos of the Tulare Assembly Center exists to our knowledge, other than a few government-posed pictures to make life in the camps appear pleasant. It is quite possible that the only true images of the Tulare Assembly Center are Koji's grandmother's illustrations. Another internee wrote a diary of her experience in the Tulare Assembly Center, which later became a published book called The Evacuation Diary of Hatsui Egami. Here's a copy of that book up here. Koji's grandmother, Shigeko Elizabeth Ozawa's illustrations are included in this book. Koji is a PhD candidate at Stanford University, where he has written professional articles about Japanese American incarceration and is currently working to complete his dissertation on the Gila River Relocation Center, in which his family was imprisoned. I am certain Koji's ancestors are very proud of him. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Lau Ozawa. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, the way this portion of the evening is going to work is the students have prepared a few questions to ask to our panelists, okay? Panelists, don't feel that you have to answer every question. If there's a question asked that you would like to share your experience, by all means, you will have that opportunity. There's a microphone on that table on that side. This side table will use my microphone here. I'll give that to you in a second. Audience members, you also have an opportunity to ask some questions. The students behind me will come by and provide you with some pens and go ahead and grab this, and some note cards, or a note card if you would like to write a question down. Once you have a question written down, feel free to kind of wave it, and a student will come by and pick up the card and the pen for you and bring it up here, and hopefully we can squeeze your question in to our program tonight. Okay? So as we begin with the student questions, if you have a question you would like to ask, by all means, please kind of capture one of our students' attention and they'll come over with an index card and pen for you. Okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this over. Do you guys know who's going to ask the first